Hello everyone and welcome to today's session about property development and the new planning legislation or the planning development rules. If you can just do me a quick favour and just let me know that you can hear me nice and loudly and clearly, that would be fantastic. If just give us a quick yes or no, that would be brilliant. Okay, so everyone say yes, they can hear us. Now, want to say welcome and thank you for coming online. And today we've got a massive session. We're going to be covering a hell of a lot of content. We're going to be looking at planning, property development and planning, and why now is the perfect opportunity to get involved. So let's get straight into it. I've got online very special guest and a very good friend of mine. His name's David Holloway. David will be introducing himself shortly as to who he is, what he's done, and more importantly, why now is the perfect opportunity. So let's get this moving forward. So starting from the beginning, and I'm just going to have a little pause here because when we edit this video, we're just going to start from now. Hi everyone, welcome to the Property Development and Planning webinar. Hopefully you're going to find this session of great use. I'm joined today by a very good friend and a property expert to the name of David Holloway. David, are you there?
I am indeed. Good evening.
Fantastic. Okay, so on this session today, we're going to be online for approximately 90 minutes. And what we're going to be looking at are the new property development rules and regulations and why now is the perfect time to get involved. So, as I said, I'm joined online with David Holloway. Now, I've known David for quite a number of years. We've done a few things together. And as a result, David is hopefully going to be sharing his world of wisdom and knowledge on property development. So, David, do you want to just let everyone introduce yourself and let everyone know who is David Holloway and why you should be the person that they should be listening to this evening?
Yeah, sure. That's a big build-up. Thank you very much, Arsh. Yeah, I've got a slide in a little while that's just give you a little bit more introduction to me. But I've been involved in property both as a property professional, as a landlord, and as a sort of private developer for 15 years or so now. I trained at Reading University in construction and surveying management, and I've done a number of different projects right around the country, and spent I think probably now in the region of about 45–50 million pounds worth of sort of money in the ground, so to speak. So I've done a number of different things, both in the residential, commercial, and office sectors. So that's a very brief summary, and I'll give you some kind of examples of that as we go through.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's get started then. So where do we start with planning and development? So let's just imagine that I'll tell you what, let's ask a question. Everyone watching this, why don't you comment below? What's your experience with property development? Are you completely new to property development? Do you kind of understand what property development is? Do you kind of understand the difference between property planning and also PD rights or property development rights, shall we call it? So if you want to just give us a quick comment in the box below, and then we'll try and tailor this webinar completely for you. So if you're in the meanwhile, David, shall we start? So lots of people coming in and say we're completely,
yeah, sure.
That's fine, believe it or not, that is absolutely fine. If you're completely new to it, so some people, one person in particular has put what is property development, and that's fine. Another person has asked, will this legislation that you cover tonight or cover on this session cover Wales too? So again, we'll cover all these bits as we go through to it. So the general consensus, David, is that some people have got properties which they own. So one person in particular says, I've helped clients with at least 15 HMOs, know the planning process, advised on procurement costs and projects for clients. Okay, but some people said, I know about PD and planning, but no idea how to get into it. So we've got a real mixed bag, but on the whole, David, I would say that we've got lots of new people that want to get involved in planning. So shall we start from the beginning?
Yep, let's do that. Let's crack on. Okay, perfect. All right. So first and foremost, thank you for kind of trusting myself and Arsh with your time. I'm probably going to take maybe 55, 60 minutes, and then we'll allow plenty of time for any other questions. There's lots of things we're going to go through, and in terms of the level of knowledge or understanding that you have at the moment, don't worry about that too much, because we can answer any questions that you might have, and you only know what you know, so to speak. So there's no stupid question in that sense. Okay, so like I say, I appreciate your time, and let's get into it. Okay, so by the end of this webinar, what we're going to know, what we're going to cover, why now is an ideal time to learn about land planning and property development. We're going to learn the 6 steps of a land and development process. Now, within each of those, there are various stages, but fundamentally, there are 6 steps to the land and development process. So the individual asked the question, what is property development? Well, hopefully we'll clarify that as we go through. We're also going to talk about the 3 most important reasons that people succeed in property development. A lot of the times, property development is seen as sort of the the absolute kind of pinnacle of property investment, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go through every single stage before that to do it. Someone mentioned there about HMOs. I've never owned an HMO, so it's not sort of an absolute path that you have to go through. We're going to talk about the 3 key elements all deals must have in order to be successful. And we're also going to talk, and hopefully this is relevant to people, the 11 ways to make money from property development, at least 5 of which you do not need cash for. Okay, and we're going to cover those. And then we're going to move on to the 8 key changes to the planning law that have effectively totally changed the game. If you own a house, not necessarily a flat, but if you own a house right now, I think hopefully you're going to be quite surprised about what you'll be able to do going forward as a result of these changes, which come into effect on the 1st of September. Now, I've kind of simplified that a little bit, and there is a little bit more detail, but we'll get into all of these things. So we've got quite a lot to go through in the next sort of 55, 60 minutes. By all means, put your questions in the box. Arsh is going to monitor those. If it's absolutely relevant as we go through, we'll do it as we go through, but I'd like, if possible, to keep them to the end, because then we can kind of make sure that everyone gets the content and everything that they need in the if you like, the shortest time possible. I'm a big kind of believer in kind of keeping to time, not a big fan of webinars that go on for hours and hours and lots of waffle. Okay, cool. All right, so just for attending and staying with us, you're going to get a link to 3 free gifts. There's actually 4 on there. I've added another one tonight, but let me just explain what they are. So the first one is, and this will particularly help one of the questions that we had right at the top, development blueprint. Effectively, this is a flow chart that explains all the various stages of the development process from start to finish, and also where to go if something if you hit a little bit of a roadblock halfway through. So it's one of those kind of things. Well, did you get planning? Yes, no. If you if you didn't, go back to here and do this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that hopefully it's a a really good kind of method to follow. The second one is a simple deal appraisal tool. You enter a few key numbers within effectively a spreadsheet, and it will basically tell you in the first instance whether that looks like it has the bones of being a deal or not. Now, deals can fall over at various stages and can fall out of bed in terms of not being a deal later on, but this is the first pass tool that I use every single time that I look at a deal, and it's also the one that I send to my lender. So I have a more advanced one as well that we use later on, and I'll show you some detail of that later. But this is a really useful first pass, and once you understand it, you can appraise a deal in pretty much 10 minutes in terms of whether it has legs to waste any more time on. Okay, and the final one is this sort of summary of all of these planning changes. It has been an interesting last few weeks. Obviously the government want to get the economy back up and running, and whether this was just kind of fortuitous timing in terms of these changes, or whether it was driven by that, I'm not sure. But effectively, there's been some huge changes. Like I say, 7 changes to permitted development rights, a complete overhaul of the use class system, which I will explain in a second, and also the publication of the white paper, which is in consultation at the moment for the next 6 weeks, which is a complete reform of the planning system, and I will touch on that briefly. But effectively, this PDF that you're going to get is a summary of that. Just that white paper alone was 78 pages. So unless you're struggling to sleep, I suggest you probably don't need to read it all. And what I've gone through is I have done that. I have read it and summarized all the kind of key points on that for you, as well as all the key points of the 3 new pieces of legislation. And then if you just allow us at the very end of this session, we're just going to give you a little bit of an introduction about an opportunity that you may or may not be interested in terms of opportunity to sort of learn more and work with us on a program that we've written. Okay, just go down. Here we go. Okay, so asked earlier who I am. So give you a little bit of an introduction. I've kind of had 2 careers really. In the first half of my working life, I spent 10 years in the service industry, really, kind of managing local and regional sort of hospitality and leisure facilities, and kind of had a little bit of a niche of going in and turning around underperforming businesses, getting in under the skin of, what the issues were, where the rotten apples were, and all that kind of stuff, and making things tick again. As long as the bones of the business were there, I could kind of normally, improve it in some way, shape, or form. So that was kind of the first half. And I'm going to give you the kind of short version of this, but effectively, then I retrained. When I was probably about 30 or so, and I effectively went back to Reading University, and I studied surveying construction management, and since then really have spent I can't actually see my words on here, so I'm going to have to talk verbatim because I've got a little box in front of me, but effectively spent kind of the last 19 years now since then, delivering all sorts of build projects and from cradle to grave really, in terms of finding sites, securing planning on them, working up the design, building them out, selecting contractors, and I've done that across 3 sectors really, in terms of one of my kind of little, if you like, strap lines on my kind of main business is creating inspiring places to work, live and play. So I've done stuff in the office space, obviously the work environment. I've done lots of stuff in leisure, and then obviously residential as well. I'm from Reading originally. I'm now based in Bournemouth. Yeah, and I've held various sort of corporate roles, but I'm now fully doing my own thing. Yeah, it's a fantastic time now to really kind of capitalize on that, and this giving me the time to do things like this. And I guess, obvious question, why am I here? Why are we doing this? Well, last year we within Arsh's group, I did some stuff purely for charity. I did a little sort of talk and kind of did a various series of webinars to help people as a basic introduction to development. And we raised a kind of bunch of money for 88 Bikes, which is a charity I was supporting last year. And lockdown actually really gave me the opportunity to kind of think, well, how can I repurpose that and actually create what I consider to be a real sort of proper program, and a genuine value for money program. I don't consider myself a trainer in that sense. I don't run loads of training courses and all that sort of stuff, but I kind of wanted to use my brain, if you like, during lockdown, and create something that hopefully was going to be of use to people, and I wanted to help sort of people understand the opportunity, but also the pitfalls of land and property development. I'm passionate about property and I love creating, as I said, inspiring places to live, work and play, but there's plenty of room in this space, and it's a great space for people that are creative and want to do interesting things. So that was kind of the rationale. My intention with this program is to create a fully transparent, honest and thorough program to support you in learning this, what I consider to be a fascinating aspect of property. And I wanted to do something to offer a complete A to Z of the process, no filler, there's no coffee breaks on this because it's all kind of online and everything else, and also to continue raising money for causes that I care about, because when we talk about the program at the very end, 20% of all the profits going to go to charity, which hopefully will do some good there as well. So that's a little bit about me. A couple of project examples. This is in central London. So I said there about sort of work and play and living and so forth. Forgot my own strapline there for a second. This is a leisure project I did right in the centre of London. For those of you who recognise it, top left, this is actually the BBC building behind the big sort of donut building, and we kind of repurposed some old land there. Really interesting project in many ways, because it was quite a political scheme, which was quite a challenge, but also, and I, out of respect for the people involved, I can't talk too much about this on a webinar, but this actually became not just a kind of a no money down deal, but a no money full stop deal. I will talk to you privately about that if you're interested, but it was a fascinating deal, and had all sorts of interesting, complex elements to it. But centre of London brought its own challenges on its own. So that's the kind of the play bit, if you like. The work bit, this was one I finished in 2018, I think. Big sort of headquarters base, and the interesting thing about this one was that this kind of deal only really happens once the tenant has actually signed. So effectively what happens is a tenant says, I'm looking for a building. They sign a 10-year lease when not a spade has been put in the ground, and effectively that allows then for the funding to happen, and the build to happen, and the development process here. This building was actually sold to somebody else, with a tenant effectively ready to move in, so that the developer process on this was that the money was made before the building was even finished, and they were out of the deal before it had even finished. So again, a really kind of fascinating project to be involved in. Bit more maybe relevant for people here. So this is the residential. This is one that we actually have at the moment. We'd have sold it by now if it wasn't for the nitrate issue in the south. For those of you who know this, you may not, but there are 7 local authorities in the south at the minute who have not approved a single planning application since April last year. So basically, their planners have been sitting on their arse, and lots of politics going on with that. But effectively, we should get a solution next month. But effectively, what we did, hopefully, you can see this. So on the bottom left, you've got a bit of a sort of a Google Earth image. That square plot that looks like it's got a little bit of a car park to the right. That was the plot. And what we did was we effectively shortened the gardens. We tidied up all these nasty houses on the top left, and they were uninhabitable. They were dreadful. We've sold all of those, and effectively we got planning to build the images that you see on the right hand side on the space that we subsequently created in the rear. And hopefully it's not sort of too crass to talk about money, but on that particular deal alone, just for that piece of land at the back, which effectively was free land from the deal that we'd done, we've sold that. We're not going to build it out. We just sold it to another developer, and that will sell for in excess of £200,000 for that plot, and it cost us probably £6,000-7,000 maybe to get planning for that particular plot. So it's very lucrative in terms of doing that element of development, and hopefully that demonstrates and hopefully gives you some confidence that actually you don't need £200,000. We needed £7,000 in order to generate £200,000. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of things that I do, and obviously I'm happy to kind of answer any more specific questions as we go through. If you want to find out a little bit more about me, Remarkable Land Partners is our company, remarkablelandpartners.com. It's effectively myself and one other chap. The other chap is a lawyer. So between us, we have a good understanding of how to make these deals happen. And there's lots of other imagery on that website as well of other projects. Okay. So that's a little bit about me. So why now? Okay, why all this stuff going on in the world with the economy's on its knees and everything else, and everyone's right to be concerned. I think there is some massive challenges ahead, but also with challenge creates opportunity, and I want to kind of just maybe before we get into some of the detail, dispel a few myths as to why maybe people think this isn't a good time and it might be risky and so forth. First one, now is a terrible time to be investing, developing. Well, it does depend what you mean by investing and developing. Would I, at this moment in time, be going out and buying a plot, for example, with planning permission already to build 50 flats? No, I absolutely wouldn't at this moment in time, regardless of where it is, because we don't know where the bottom of the market is. So that is kind of risky investing to an extent, to use that sort of example. But as we go through here, you'll see, and hopefully the example of what I've just said there, one of the reasons that we're not building those 2 units out is because there's enough kind of straightforward profit in the first stage, and it allows also enough fat in the game for the next person to come in and just do the bit that they are the specialists at, which is the building bit. So there are various stages. You don't have to do the whole cradle to grave, and I absolutely wouldn't suggest you do that, from kind of stage 1 anyway. Second one, I can never find a viable site. Well, I think that's going to become easier for 3 reasons, actually. The first one is some of these changes that the government have announced, because it almost kind of creates brand new land, if you like, that wasn't there before. And the second 2 are actually an outcome of COVID. Obviously, no one would have wanted this, and I hope no one here has been affected in the worst kind of possible ways by this. But it will, I think, hopefully create a different kind of thinking. Certainly in the commercial space it will, and certainly with landowners. So we regularly send out letters to landowners. We identify plots of land that we believe have some potential, and we write to them. And in some cases, obviously, people want to keep the land at the back of their house or whatever it might be. But I think if they've had maybe their son, daughter, whatever, that's been laid off from work, and they only see their grandkids kind of once a year or whatever, that play in that garden. Previously they might have kept that for sentimental reasons, but now maybe it's a better time to have a little bit more security in the bank, and be a bit more pragmatic about it. And certainly that's what we're finding in terms of the response that we're getting to letters. The response rate has increased as a percentage in the last kind of 6 weeks or so, I would suggest. The other reason, the final reason I mentioned there about the commercial, one of the things we'll come on to is the change of the use class order. I've worked with a lot of big organizations in the past that have had many thousands of employees, and they have one building where they up until now they've always assumed that it's just a cost of doing business. I've got to have somewhere for these people to sit. Well, COVID has demonstrated that you don't actually need that. People are working from home, and they are working for the most part productively. So any business with any savvy is going to say, well, do I need this big footplate that I've had, or floor plate rather, that I've had up till now? Can I shave a little bit off of my operating cost? And that's going to an extent reinvigorate the office to resi market. If you'd have asked me 6 months ago, personally, there were very, very few decent decent office to resi opportunities. They were kind of overpriced. All the good stuff had gone a few years ago. But I think that's going to open up again now, and particularly with the enhancement that the planning changes have provided, and also with the class use order change. I think we're going to get more mixed use buildings as well. So it makes an awful lot more sense for a building to have maybe a bit of retail on the ground floor, a gym on the first floor, and office on the 2 upper floors, for example, than it does just having one tenant. You're kind of more highly leveraged in that sense. So I think for those 3 reasons alone, finding more viable sites is going to become a little bit easier. Third thing, must have money. Well, obviously it helps for sure, but as we're going to go through, a lot of the strategies don't require you to have money. And as I said earlier, I wouldn't recommend that you do a cradle to grave kind of thing on your first project and jump in and do everything. That's people can do it, but you don't need to. Better to understand the process stage by stage. Every single project I do, I learn something from, and something new comes out of that. You know, yes, it helps, but it's not absolutely essential. And the other one we touched on, you know, that you must do other strategies first. I'm not convinced by that necessarily. Obviously, it helps to have some knowledge for sure, but you know, is driving a Mini going to kind of help you to drive a Ferrari any better? I'm not necessarily sure it is. It is a different skill set and a different mindset. You know, I've got some you know, traditional buy-to-lets and bits and pieces like that. But that sector is, you know, is getting tougher. Even, was it Friday, they announced that you know, the sort of eviction thing extends for 6 months now. So, you know, if someone stops paying you, well, that's an awful lot of time that you've got to pay the you know, the mortgage on that property. So I don't see the relevance of being a buy-to-let landlord and then moving into development. I would challenge that thinking a little bit. Just a couple more. It's risky. Obviously, it can be risky, but in my experience, the best developers are risk adverse. And you know, the amount of stuff that comes to me that just simply isn't a deal, or you know, even if it is, there are reasons why I won't do it. My sort of kind of mantra on that is, it's far better to be out of a deal wishing you were in it than in a deal wishing you were out of it. And so that does require patience, and it does require a level of discipline. But it's, you know, something that I've certainly learned over you know, a number of years, in terms of, you know, what makes a deal and what doesn't, and also having more than one exit, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second. You know, well, I need experience and I don't know where to start. Well, yes, that's true. The other option, I guess, is that you have a step-by-step support program from someone who has done it before. And certainly, you know, between Arsh and myself, we have a, you know, significant amount of experience of all sorts of things within property. You know, if we haven't done it, we probably know someone that has, for sure. How do I know if it's a deal or not? Well, going back to the point 2 seconds ago, actually, in my experience, most deals are not deals at all. You know, most of the stuff on the market is garbage. It's overpriced. And this is why, you know, it can become confusing and it can become risky for people. If you know, you're just looking on Rightmove and things like that. You know, once you know how to appraise a site properly, the answer to whether it's a deal or not is very simple. It genuinely is. Yes, there's things you need to understand. You need to mitigate risk, and like I said, there are various stages you go through. But you know, once you understand it, it's kind of fairly quick to work out whether it has you know, the bones of a deal or not. So, David, if it's that easy, why isn't everyone doing it? These are the 3 perceived hardest things in property, or property development, should I say. Finding sites, appraising sites, funding the deal. All of those things require a level of knowledge, for sure, but in my view, they are not the hardest things. These, in my opinion, are the 3 real reasons why people don't succeed in property development. It's a lack of action, it's a fear of failure, and a fear of rejection, and a lack of persistence. Now, obviously, if you don't have a level of knowledge, it's difficult to take action. If you don't have a level of knowledge, it's potentially an opportunity to fail or to you know, get rejected in some way, shape, or form. And both of those ultimately are going to lead to, you know, a lack of persistence. You know, because it's difficult sometimes. It's, you know, a lot of any success in any business is, you know, mental strength to an extent, but it's also, you know, having the right support network and people around you. I genuinely, having speak to so many people about this, and you know, most people have qualities and skills that they can use, and you know, transferable skills from other sectors that they might have. But you've got to know, you know, what steps to take, and you've got to just keep doing it as well. This is not a sector for it slightly grates me when people, oh, you know, your first deal, 100 grand, and you know, it's easy and you don't need money and all these kind of things. They're all kind of true in isolation, but in reality, you know, you have to almost kind of have the perfect storm. There are ways and means in which you can do this in a systematic way, and using the skills and the knowledge that you have by adopting a system to to do it. But am I going to say to you, this is for everybody? Is it? No, I'm not. Is it easy? No, it's not. Does it take persistence? Absolutely. You're damn right it takes persistence. And it's taken me kind of 15 years, if you like, to become a sort of a what I consider even remotely successful in this sector. But that knowledge allows me now to go at a much faster pace to be able to get where I'd like to go in terms of doing different deals and doing bigger deals and so forth. Okay, let's talk about the 3 key elements that all deals must have. Okay, if you take one thing away from tonight, hopefully you'll take more. But if you take one thing away, I'd like it to be this, because this will kind of crystallize your thinking. First and foremost, you have to have an exit plan, and that exit plan has to be based on genuine, verified demand. Okay, there is no point building a block of flats or converting something into flats if there are no occupants for those flats, no buyers for those flats, or those flats effectively can't rent for a decent rate that allows you to get out of the deal from a development lending perspective. It all begins with the exit. It all begins with the demand. And ideally, you need more than one exit. Obviously, you want a plan A, but you need a plan B and sometimes a plan C as well in terms of kind of worst case scenarios. But it amazes me how people want to sell you a block of flats. And in fact, we looked at a deal a little while ago, and it was a great scheme. It was a lovely gated scheme. But there was just no demand or not sufficient sales volumes in that area over any sustainable length of time that could justify it. So we walked away. As good as it was on paper, there was no exit. So that's the first thing. I cannot overemphasize that enough. Second thing is, you got to have the ability to add value. Gone are the days where you can buy something, give it a little bit of a sort of a tart and sell it on. That doesn't happen. Funnily enough, just a very quick aside, when I got divorced many years ago, I had to give some of my property to my wife, and we had a fantastic rental property, but it only just become a good renter because the rates had changed. We were on a kind of fixed rate, and this thing was making just as a single buy to let, it was making kind of £800–900 a month or something, and but it was a hassle for her. She didn't particularly want it, so she sold it. And sad, at the time, didn't get the opportunity to sort of buy it, didn't even know it was being sold particularly. And I checked the other day, literally a few days ago, the guy that bought it sold it for 30 grand more 3 months after he bought it. So in a rising market, any idiot can make money, but you've got to have the ability, as I say, to add value. And fundamentally, in terms of development, that's through the development process. Through the planning process, by adding value in some way, shape or form, either by changing its use, increasing its footprint, various other ways. But that's the kind of the crux to it. You need to understand and be able to understand whether it has the potential to add value in some way. And once you know those two, that then determines what that property or that piece of land is worth to you. So you've got to buy at the right price. Okay. My business partner, actually, we had a conversation earlier. He's looking to do his own kind of rebuild, so to speak, and he's looking at a particular property. And I just ran some numbers for him earlier today, and the reality is that it's not worth what the guy wants for it, but the guy paid more than it was worth at the time. So he's going to struggle maybe to get that sort of what he wants, get it for the price that he wants. The other guy is obviously trying to sell it without really having kind of much hope, in my opinion, of getting at that price. You've got to buy at the right price. The property is only worth to you a certain thing. I've made offers in the past of £500,000 for things that were on the market for £1 million, because the reality is that was what it was worth in terms of the potential that it had. And I think as long as you do that with integrity and you explain why, then you've got no issue with that. You're not trying to rip people off. In fact, in many cases, you can offer more if you know how to do this properly. You can actually offer them more than the current use value of that property. So those are the 3 key elements all deals must have. 6 steps of the land and development process. Now, I appreciate we're kind of whizzing through this, but so I want to be respectful of people's time. For me, like I say, 6 elements, and I've kind of wrapped this into the word secure, and that is S is the site finding, so identifying suitable, profitable sites. The E is for evaluation. Is the deal viable once all costs are known? And then, as I said, even if you do know the cost, is there a demand for that particular product? There's absolutely no point building flats if the demand and where the demand is in 3-bed family homes or whatever. The C is for control. So that's all about working with landowners to help them solve their problem and maximize the value of the land for them, with them, and obviously you would benefit from that as well. The U is for uplift, and effectively that's the planning uplift. So that's all about how to use the planning system and or change of use or reposition of the product to add value. And it's also about how to maximize the design of the property to add value as well. The R is about the redevelopment process and the pre-construction process and the on-site process. Some shocking sort of kind of horror stories you hear about people getting into bed with builders and main contractors without doing the proper process first. Having a full specification of works prepared so that you know what you're paying for and you're not getting any surprises and all those kind of things, as well as all the health and safety side of things and the law. There's some recent legislation just come out on that on the back of Grenfell as well, so that's going to change things a little bit too. So that's the redevelopment process. And then the final, the E of the secure, is the exit, and that's all about knowing how to structure your exit, both in terms of legalities, splitting titles, lease creation, selling freeholds, all that sort of stuff, and obviously working with agents as well to maximize end values and close your project down, close your company down if you've set it up in that way, and so forth. Effectively, that is the process in a nutshell. And I know I've kind of whizzed through that, but like I say, in lockdown I sort of wrote the whole A to Z of this, really, in terms of the kind of the step by step, and when I then looked at it, in its simplest form, those are the 6 elements. And the interesting thing about this is that you don't have to know all of them to get started, and you don't even necessarily even have to start at the site finding bit. When we kind of first started and doing our own stuff, I thought actually that the safe element was to buy stuff with planning, because I knew about construction and development and dealing with contractors and stuff. That kind of made sense for me to do that. But actually, I quickly kind of understood, well, that's all well and good if you could find the right sites, but what if I could find the right sites that didn't have the planning bit and do that bit as well and use the knowledge that I had there? Well, that's a completely different angle. You don't have to do the whole thing. Hopefully that makes sense, and like I say, we're happy to answer any questions on that. Okay, so you are seeing hopefully now a kind of a blue screen with a little graphic on the right hand side. That is the blueprint, if you like, that you're going to get a copy of, and I'll explain where you can go to get that in a little while. But effectively within that, there are various stages in which you can make money from property development. I'm going to whiz through those, and then we're going to get straight into the planning development changes. So 11 ways, as I said at the start. First and foremost is you could find a site yourself. You can introduce it to others, people completely outside of our group of communities, of which Arsh and I have one together, and then obviously he has his own elite property tribe as well. And if you did that, you'd probably earn you should be earning a finder's fee. That would be way one. Second one would be to introduce a potential site to myself or people within our group, but you don't even have to control that. So you haven't gone through the whole process of getting a lease option. If you didn't understand whether it was a deal or not, but you kind of pinged it my way and I thought it had some validity and something came of it, well, I'm going to reward you for that. Obviously, it's not going to be the fully kind of structured sort of typically 2% of land value, because you've controlled the deal, but reasonable sums can be paid just for basic introductions. Third way is to effectively appraise and package deals, whether be on market or off market, to Arsh's database, and that's something that Arsh has been working hard on over the last kind of 2 years or so, and has all sorts of different deals on there, but more and more there's starting to become development deals on there. And once you understand how land works, that can be extremely lucrative in that sense. By the way, so far all of these don't need any money for. Fourth one, control and introduce a potential site to me, and together we obtain planning. Now that's really interesting, because, for example, if you'd have brought that site that I showed you earlier, then the one where we sell the 2 units, effectively, let's say it costs us 10 grand for planning. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of purchase cost there as well, and I've simplified it for tonight. But effectively, let's say there was an uplift of £200,000. Well, there's 100 grand. That's a decent payday for most people, and effectively, you learn how to do that, and then you can either go off, or we can do it again together, or whatever it might be. So that's option number 4. Obviously, with that one, there is a little bit of money involved to actually get the planning, and that is risk, because you might not get the planning, but I generally wouldn't progress with something unless I felt it had a good chance. The 5th one is to find a site, control it, and obtain the planning yourself. The reason that we've created this program is all of the information is there. This is not an upsell to another course and all that nonsense. All right, everything is there, and if you understand it and you're confident enough to do it, you can take all the rewards yourself. There's plenty of sites out there. This is not about controlling an environment. So that would be number 5. Number 6 is purchase a site with planning permission and add some form of additional value, and then sell it on again before you've even potentially built that out. So for example, we are looking at one at the moment that effectively is an office block that has permitted development rights initially for 6 units, but because the way the freehold is structured, it actually has potential for 18 units. And all of that all of those 18 units are under these new permitted development rights. So if we could control that, secure it, get the PD for the 18 units, or even present the idea of the 18 units, that site is instantly going to be worth more. And we've not put a spade in the ground or a hammer in the wall. We are just using the planning system to do that. So effectively adding additional value. Next one is very similar, but effectively you buy it with planning permission, you just build out and obviously sell, but you obviously aren't going to realize the profit on that until you sell those units. And as I said, in the current climate, that's carries some risk. Having said that, on that site previously we had there was 8 units in the older block. We'd sold 5 before lockdown, and within a couple of weeks of lockdown coming out, we had 2 units secure and sold for full ask effectively. So early kind of signs are that hasn't been impacted, but we're not out of furlough. We are yet to see the impact fully on the high street, job losses and so forth. So it is not plain sailing by any means for those of you that think it might be. 8 is to find a site yourself, control it, add the value, build and sell. That's the whole cradle to grave. That's the sort of utopia. But you don't need to do it all, and we are more and more now just doing the kind of front end stuff, because it's cleaner, it's simpler, it's using our brains rather than our brawn, so to speak. There's less parties involved, and it's it's nice, clean, simple process. Number 9, find a site, control, add value, and then you build and sell it with us, i.e. our organization would help project manage it effectively for a fee. So it's not an equity share kind of thing, it's just a fee element. It's not something we particularly do. I've done it in the corporate world before, but that is a potential way of doing it. Now, obviously I'm going to go through 11 ways, some of which are unique to the the sort of community that we've built. So some might not be relevant for you, if it's not something you want to progress with us. So I fully understand that. But that would be number 9. Number 10 is basically exactly the same, but effectively we would use our expertise to make sure it's delivered, and then obviously we'd share the profit on that. And then number 11 is effectively you invest in someone else's project. If you've got cash but you don't have the time, the experience, or indeed the interest, well, you can, as long as it's the right scheme. And what I would also say here is be really, really careful. On the program, we're going to massive detail on due diligence of both people that you're going to borrow money from, people that you're going to lend money to, etc., etc. And there are obviously some laws around that as well. So that's it is the 11th way, but be kind of quite careful about that. All right, let's get into this. Okay, 8 massive changes announced by the government, 7 new PD rights plus the overhaul of the class use order system. I spent 2 hours doing a webinar on this to ask this community, I think it was last week. So I'm going to kind of give you the overview of it, but the PDF goes into an awful lot of detail as well. This is a link if you want to take a screenshot of that to the actual legislation, of which there are 3 pieces. Leave that up for a second. And then we get onto this first piece. So this is effectively the use class order system. Now, basically what we've got here is different kinds of use. So we all live in houses normally, and they are classed as C3 use, okay, which is the sort of the light limey green kind of column on the towards the right. And sort of the 4th box down. So that's a dwelling house is classed as C3. Okay, if you go straight over to the left-hand side, you'll see a shop is classed as A1, a cafe and restaurant is classed as A3, and so on and so forth. Lots of different categories, as you can see there. Okay, so the first coloured column on the left, and then there's a little break, and the sort of the second coloured column in from the right-hand side, they were the class use categories, and well, they are until the 31st of August, so next week, right? And then they change to the column on the right hand side. Why is that relevant? What interest is that? Well, they're basically merging an awful lot of these into the same use class. So at this moment in time, you cannot turn a cafe into a shop unless you have the full planning process. Under this new class order, they become the same class. So you can switch from a cafe to a shop, or you can switch from a cafe to an office. And even in some cases, you can switch from a shop to a gym, which previously would have come under D2. So it's huge, and it's really damn smart as well, because they know that the high street's going to have an impact, the office environment's going to have an impact, and so by doing this, it allows commercial operators or people that are acquiring commercial property to have the best possible chance of finding the right tenants. Clearly, the high street's going to be impacted. Clearly, some businesses are going to go by the wayside. But previously, if you had a shop with a certain kind of tenant, well, you couldn't just repurpose that into something else. Whereas now you've got a huge opportunity to do that, and it totally kind of reinvigorates that sector, because you'll be able to look at it in a completely different light. Where's the demand? I'm looking at that shop or that mixed-use commercial building. Well, I know up until next week I could only do A, B, and C. Now I can almost do kind of A, B, C right the way through to S and T sort of thing. It's huge in that sense. So it creates a real interesting, exciting opportunity to be able to maximize the value of commercial property. It doesn't, just to be clear, it doesn't change, nothing's changed for houses or HMOs in that sense, but it's mainly within the commercial sector. These changes effectively are valid until 31st of July 2021. I'm just going to check that, actually, sorry, bear with me one second. Yes, but I would fully expect that would continue. Okay, I appreciate for some of you that might be a kind of whirlwind of I don't really understand what on earth that man's talking about. But as you go through and learn more about this stuff, please trust me, it is seismic in its implication. Okay. Couple of other kind of key elements of that. I'm not going to go through all of these, but don't assume that because something is, I'm just going to shut this 1 second, bear with me. That's better, I can see the whole screen now, sorry. If you have a shop that there is no similar facility within 1,000 meters, it could be considered as a sort of community use, so that might be restricted or heavily restricted in terms of its change of use. Hot food takeaways and pubs have moved into the sui generis class, and permission is needed to move out of those. So this doesn't apply. A shop in this scenario is not a hot food takeaway. Okay, and just to be clear on this, councils cannot try and stop these changes to the use class order system through an Article 4 direction. That can only be used against permitted development. This is not permitted development, this is use class order changes. Okay, so you have an absolute right to do this under this new legislation. Hopefully, if any of you hold commercial property and you're struggling to get tenants and that kind of thing, or you've done something with a property where you've got residential above it, but you can't find a tenant, well, this, I would hope, would make a massive change to the kind of the types of tenants or the range of tenants that you could get in there. I have kind of done that really quickly, so hopefully that helps people. Let's move on. I can't move my mouse for some reason, bear with me. For some reason I'm not able to move the screen. Arsh?
Hi David, yeah, can you use your keypad for a second?
I'm trying to. Let's have a look, hold a second. Yeah, it's kind of frozen for some reason.
Your mouse is moving.
Yeah, the mouse is moving, but it ain't doing nothing.
Right, okay. Let me just quickly see if I can jump in there.
You take back control of the screen.
Yeah, hang on, bear with me. I'll have to do that by getting your. Bear with me a second. Sorry, apologies about this, guys. Oh, no, not yet. David, sorry, I'm going to make you the presenter again. The reason being I don't have your slides.
Okay, hold on a second. Show my screen. Let me just see what happens there.
David, can I ask that?
There we go. Got it. That's fine. Back now. That's fine. Okay, sorry for that, guys. Okay, so
apology, David.
You okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, apologies for that. It just froze for a second there. Right.
Can everyone hear David? Richard said very clearly, just can't get the staff. Okay, hear David clearly. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I hope you're sitting down for this bit because this is quite fascinating. There are 7 new changes to PD rights. I've got 5 on this screen. I'm going to go through the other 2 on the next slide. Okay, we're going to talk about the bottom ones first because this will affect pretty much everyone on this webinar, I would think. So if you look on the left hand side, you're going to see a description that says single dwelling, single dwelling, single dwelling. You're going to see that 3 times, and then next to it it's going to say detached, semi-detached, or terraced. Right, basically, if you own a house, you are now able to build a new dwelling above your house under permitted development. I will say that again. If you own a dwelling, you are now able, in theory, okay, there are some steps you have to go through, but the principle now exists for you to be able to build a new dwelling or indeed an extension of your property above your own property. That is huge. So effectively what they've done is they've created two classes, class AC and class AD in this scenario. I'm just going to move this over. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm just going to refer to my notes. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, got it. Right. Okay.
And just the
So
box to the corner of the screen. You don't have to close it. Just move it with your mouse just to the corner of the screen.
yep, that one there.
There you go.
Yeah, kind of. That's fine. It's all right. That's fine. As long as everyone else can see it, that's fine. Okay. So effectively, Class AD. So this is the middle sort of texty box that you're seeing. This permits the construction of new flats on top of detached dwelling houses, enabling existing houses that are detached, semi-detached, or in a terrace to be extended upwards to provide additional living space by constructing additional stories. The right allows the construction of up to 2 additional stories on the topmost story of a detached house that is currently 2 stories or more, or 1 additional story on a detached house of 1 story above ground level. Okay. In a terrace of 2 or more houses, the right allows the construction of up to 2 additional stories on the topmost story of a house, and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, 1 story. Even if it's terrace, it's still till one story. Okay. So, I mean, I can't under sort of or overemphasize this enough. Effectively, it allows anyone that owns a property to get into property development, and also, you know, even kind of if the scenario allows you to pay off your own mortgage pretty much if you did it in the right way. A good friend of mine has got a similar property. The guy, I go cycling with him, and I did some numbers for him last week, and you know, his basically house is worth about £500,000 and he can do this and effectively then end up with a property that's worth 700,000 and clear his mortgage at the same time. So a net movement of about £400,000. So, you know, it's life changing, hopefully, for many people. There are some restrictions on this, and the key ones I've got on the right hand side, but there are more, and these are in the PDF that you're going to get. Okay, clearly, if you're going to block next door's light, you know, if it's in a protected area of some sort, and so on and so forth, those restrictions still exist. Okay, so, you know, it's not an absolute kind of green light to do anything you want, but the principle of it is quite phenomenal. There is an 18-meter limit in terms of the maximum height of that building once it's got its 2 stories, and it also can only be 3.5 meters above neighboring properties. Now that's quite interesting, because 3.5 meters is not sufficient to get 2 stories, generally speaking. So in many cases it's going to be limited to 1, but obviously if you've got a fairly good, if you happen to have a flat roof building next to you and you've got a picture roof, for example, then you've got some void space there that you could utilize and certainly get the 2 units potentially. Okay, so hopefully that kind of that change is a bit of a kind of a thunderbolt for people. It is a huge move, and effectively is the delivery of these kind of airspace rights that have been mooted for a few years in terms of what they what they wanted to do. And let me I'm just going to go down. In reality, stopping me doing it again for some reason. This is frozen again for me, Arsh, for some reason.
Okay, David, is it every time you move the control panel that it's stopping you?
Yeah.
Okay, so right, bear with me a second, guys.
I'm going to stop moving the control panel. That'll be easy, won't
it? Stop messing with it.
If you just reset it, then it should be all right.
Okay, 2 seconds. Tell you what, if I can't.
Let me give control. Let me do that. There you go. You should be able to do something now.
Okay, so it's not going to allow me to control your. It's not going to allow me to control your.
Oh, sorry, it's come back. I find it might just be right. Okay. All I'm going to do is go up and down. That's all I'm going to do now, and hopefully we'll be fine. Right. The top 2 on here, we've got effectively mixed use buildings. So these would be things like, you know, a shop and some flats above and so forth. Effectively what they've done is created, again, the pretty much the same ability. So if you have a terraced mixed use unit, so it might be a, you know, a corner shop or something, and then, you know, some flats above it, you can effectively, under these new rules, add again up to 2 stories on a terrace building. It's a maximum height of 18 meters, and if it's a detached building, it's a maximum height of 30 meters. Now the peculiar thing here is if it's a detached mixed use building, it must be 3 stories or more now before you can add additional stories. I got sent one the other day. It's absolutely perfect, beautiful, beautiful building that we can do a huge amount with, but it doesn't fall under this. We'd have to go through a few, you know, the normal planning because it's only 2 stories. Bizarrely, if it's a terrace and 2 stories, you can go to 4. Don't quite know. They must have been, you know, not had lunch or something when they came up with that idea. I don't know, but that's yeah, that's huge as well, and that's class AA and class AB. Okay, I'll give you a visual of what that means in a second. Okay. The last 2 are commercial buildings and purpose-built flats. So effectively, if you have a current block of flats, an office, a research and development unit, or a light industrial unit, a new class has been created called ZA. And what it means is that you can demolish that building and rebuild it with a further 2 stories of up to an additional 7 meters to a new maximum height of 18 meters and a total footprint of 1,000 square meters. So previously, for those of you familiar, office to residential, you could only convert the existing office, you couldn't knock it down. You know, there was a limit there to the exterior. You'd have to apply for full planning to change the look and the feel of it afterwards. Now you can knock it down, you can build a new purpose-built unit, so you can maximize the space inside as well, because certainly with a lot of offices, sometimes you having to give away a lot of communal space. You can knock it down, you can build a further 2 stories, okay? And you don't have to prove that there's a demand for that building in its current form. Now that's key, all right? There's no Section 106 affordable housing. You can even add a cellar if there wasn't one there previously, okay? The one thing you can't do is you can't stretch it out. It has to stay on the same footprint that the original building was on, but you can go upwards, okay? Again, one of the other key restrictions is it has to be entirely vacant for at least 6 months prior to the date of the application for approval. But even if your numbers work, you know, that means that you could effectively buy it, have a tenant in there for a period of time, and then, you know, they're out and vacant for 6 months. These changes are only in place, I think, till 31st of July next year. I would just fully expect they would get extended, but you need to bear that in mind if you are doing this, because, you know, the last thing you want to do is go down that route and find that, you know, you missed the cutoff. Okay. Purpose-built flats, if you own a block there, this is quite interesting. You can basically again add 2 floors. It can't be refused because it's prominent. There's no affordable housing contribution. But interesting with block of flats, you don't have to create. You can't create an HMO, but you could create micro living. So you can have smaller units, whereas all these other ones, they've got to be, you know, proper flats. There are, on all of these things, some date restrictions in terms of the building has to be within a certain time frame. So if I go up 1 second, for example, with the houses have to be built between 1948 and 2018, I think it is. I can't see because the things in my way. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that that was when planning first really came in this country, was 1948. So there's a register that exists, and also, you know, before that date, you're getting into lots of, you know, protected organisations that will have an interest in buildings and stuff like that. So you do need to check the dates, but, you know, it kind of covers an awful lot of stock. Okay. Now, again, like I say, I've kind of whistled through that, but hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse, and the PDF goes into, you know, quite a lot more detail. This one here is just a bit of a visual of, you know, effectively what it means. So if you looked at site B, the yellow box, that's kind of what you now, in theory, could do with that building. which before would have required full planning, would have been really contentious and so on and so forth. You know, you've got the ability to do that subject to the certain constraints that come with it, okay? Why is this relevant? Well, it positions you as an authority and gives you credibility when you're dealing with agents and owners. It gives you an additional angle now that you're looking at sites. It opens up new sites that previously weren't viable. It gives you effectively free land on properties that you currently own, and it gives you early advantage on other sites. Not everyone is going to know this stuff, so you know that you do need to kind of act on this, and this is why we're doing this webinar now, because it's kind of a really pivotal moment. So we've gone through some basic elements of property development, and why now is the kind of the key time to get involved. But obviously we have really kind of only scratched the surface, and we've gone through that at a fair old pace. As I said, I used the time in lockdown to create a program. If you just grant me maybe 5 minutes now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about that, and then we're going to give you the links of how you can get all the the free stuff that we're going to you're entitled to tonight. Okay. Secure is an online program effectively that takes, and obviously the Secure stands for the 6 steps of the development process, and it takes you through every element in significant detail. There's over 108 videos. There's 100 templates, documents, reference tools, contracts, and so forth. There's over 30 hours of listening content. There's a WhatsApp support group that you can basically interact and get your questions answered and so forth. And we're also going to offer fortnightly support calls. So basically, you can either present your deal or any content questions you've got on the program and so forth. Because we're not quite sure, this is really we launched this with a very small group a few weeks ago, and this is really the first sort of time that we've spoken about it. To the sort of the masses, so to speak. We're going to guarantee the support calls for the first 3 months, but hopefully we'll just kind of continue that. But absolutely, there's a commitment to give the support calls for the first 3 months for sure. Sorry, there we go. Okay. A little bit of a visual here. How does it work? This is an online program. I'd like to think that this is probably one of the first fully online programs. So you can learn this at your leisure, at a time that suits you. Time is a challenge for all of us at times. But basically on the left here, the first box, what you'll see is the sections. So we've got an introduction section, then we've got site finding, evaluation, control, and so forth. And you've got some numbers against it. Those are the amount of videos within each section. So you can see in the uplift section, talking about planning and design, there's 25 individual videos. If you go to the next box, the one that's headed control, those are the different sections within that. And you can see, these are not 2-minute videos, guys. These are 39 minutes, 21 minutes, 12 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. This is some real genuine detail, hopefully using the experience that I've gained over the last 15 years of doing this kind of thing. If you look at the bottom of the control box, you've got control downloads, and then if you look to the sort of little box to the right, effectively there are all sorts of support reference tools and spreadsheets and stuff that you just click on, you can download, and you've got it on your your own PC. The little screenshot at the top right is effectively how each video is presented. So unfortunately, you've got my kind of ugly mug on the bottom right, kind of talking you through this. So each one is a tutorial, if you like, that you can pause at any moment. And the beauty of this program, the platform that we've used, is that you just pick up straight away where you left off. It will, you can see it says percentage complete on the top left there. Okay. Each section is it's not just words. There's examples, there's spreadsheets, there's graphs, kind of explaining the real detail behind this. There's test cases, examples, and so on and so forth. So I've genuinely tried to kind of put my sort of heart and soul into providing something that I think is going to be useful for people, and there's nothing left out. There's not an upsell to something else with this. The bonus material, as I mentioned, templates and tools and sort of the online community. Just as an example here, in the template suite, you've got things like option agreement templates, you've got letters to vendors, you've got project management tools. The image you've got on the right-hand side there is my detailed deal appraisal, and then that links automatically to the sensitivity analysis tool, which is the sort of color the heat map, if you like, image that's tucked behind there. And what that does is tell you, well, what if I don't get the square foot values that I thought, and it drops by £10 a square foot? Where does that leave me? And what if my build costs become £10 a square foot more than I anticipated? What does that do for me? And it, moves you left and right into, what's acceptable and what's not. And there's construction contracts in there. There's even things like meeting minutes for site meetings and all that sort of stuff, and a whole host of everything that I've ever needed. I've created a version of, if you like, and put it in here. And like I said, there's about 100 different attachments and stuff like that. A couple of people that started a few weeks ago, just a couple of things that they've said, been very kind about us. Dan Butcher says, great content, worth every penny for the content alone. The resources, the downloads, the links to my team and connections are like an added free bonus. Simon Scott, who I've got to know, he actually worked with us on the charity thing we did last year and has become really good at finding deals. We talk a lot now. We haven't quite done got one away just yet, but we've bid on a number of things together. So I like to think that I will work with people who can find stuff. So Simon says the training material is a comprehensive online resource which caters to all experience levels, provides guidance, tips and education through all stages of the property development process. The fortnightly live calls allow invaluable interaction as a group to discuss and resolve any challenges you're facing or fill any knowledge gaps to allow you to maintain momentum with your projects. And equally, the WhatsApp group is a supportive environment to raise questions and share knowledge. I highly recommend this course. What's the catch? Hopefully, genuinely, there is no catch. If I'm honest, I'm not a big fan of a lot of training courses. I think a lot of them are overpriced. I think they're full of positive mental that should say PMA, sorry, positive mental attitude is important, don't get me wrong, and I'm not meaning to offend anyone that runs other courses, but it's just not my thing. The kind of whole happy clappy stuff, it's just not who I am. And I always felt there could be an alternative sort of value for money, genuinely in-depth course, and lockdown provided me the opportunity to hopefully provide that. I can't find all the great sites on my own. There is loads of opportunity, and I'm keen to work with people. I'm keen to collaborate and help other people because like I said earlier, we're not massive on social media. In fact, we're pretty much non-existent on social media. So that seems to be the way that you have to do things, and you have to kind of shout loudest. That's not really my style, but I am keen to work with good people who want to put in the effort, and hopefully make a difference to their situation in some way, shape or form. As I said, not the loudest or the best marketed program out there. This is brand new for myself. Arsh is extremely successful at what he does in his space, and we kicked this around for probably 2 or 3 years. It just I wasn't particularly interested. I like doing what I do, and I like finding sites and building stuff and things. But lockdown gave me this opportunity. So as I said, we want to work with others where we're relevant to get more deals done. And between Arsh's community and the one that we're building here, we've got a genuine exit solution for those of you who just want to focus on the site finding and the planning game routes. As I said, not my primary focus, so I've designed it in a way that you can do as much or as little with me and still benefit. If you just want to take the information and go off and run with it, no problem at all. And really important for me, there is no upsell to any other course or program. What I know is in this program. If I don't know something that comes up, I will go away and find it for you. I'm not going to charge you for that. Okay. It's just a thing of mine. I just kind of irritates me slightly, if I'm honest. So here we are. What's the catch, Dave? What's the price? So forth. Right. Whole course, $495. Okay. For those of you who've looked at this kind of thing before, other courses charge, well, I know some that are 6 times that money and plus VAT and stuff, and maybe it doesn't even cover the same level of sort of A to Z. It's £495. There's no VAT on that. That's not a monthly fee. That's £495, one payment, and you get all of that we've spoken about. If that's a challenge for you, we've got a 2-stage payment button. $299.50 for those of you who want to spread the cost. And if you're in a partnership and there's two of you, then effectively there's a third button when you go to the screen, which, if my math serves me correctly, will say 675, and that will allow two logins effectively for the program. This is a launch. I'm not going to do a big sales pitch here. If it's for you, it is. If it's not, no problem, right? It's a launch price. Hopefully, it won't stay that price forever, but that's what it is for now. And 20% of the profits are going to go to charity. That's a big thing for me. Like I say, last year I played with this a little bit and we did it absolutely 100% for charity, but I kind of wanted to kind of do a little bit more in depth this time. Two chosen charities for this year. I am looking for one more sort of personal, if you like, or local maybe. So if you're involved in a charity, by all means, please do reach out to me. The two that we're going to give resource to this year is going to be Centrepoint, which gives homeless young people a future, and ties in nicely with the mental health angle. And the second one is NSPCC. Hopefully no explanation needed. If this is the only real push from me, if it is of interest, I'm going to give two extra bits tonight if you do sign up tonight. And this is as follows: a completely free one-to-one call with myself. And the whole point of that is to find out where you live, what your background is, and how I can help you best. Okay, because where you live will dictate your sort of the best strategy to an extent, and also your knowledge and your understanding. I can kind of pinpoint you as to what areas you absolutely need to focus on with the program initially, and also just kind of get to know you guys. I've been really impressed when we did a little sort of beta test with probably about 15 people or so that did the sort of helped us out looking through this in a month or so ago. The quality of the people was great, and like I say, I'm absolutely convinced some of these guys are going to do real good things. And the second one is I'm going to give email support for a month. Now, that doesn't sound much. Let me just clarify. The program itself gives you everything you need, and then we have the fortnightly calls. This is not a great team behind me. I don't sit in a big ivory tower. I'm sitting on my dining table at the moment, and it's kind of just me. But if you've got deals and you're kind of struggling how to appraise it and whatever else, ping them over and I'll work with you and I will give you that support. Now, that doesn't have to start on day one when you sign up, because it's going to take you a little bit of time to digest the information, and I'd rather you do that bit first. But what we can do is, we can work together and I can tell you where you're maybe slightly going wrong, what else you need to look at. And obviously, as I've said before, if it's a genuine deal that, you want to work with me on in a more kind of structured, formal way, then that's part of my intention with this program anyway. But this is just a kind of an extra little sort of support for you. So hopefully those might be of interest to some of you. A couple of other very quick, and then we're going to get to the link. Gus says, excellent resource for learning all about property development. I can't see the rest of the screen, but you can see it, so whatever he said, it was nice. And then Olive, great content, very elaborate with clear explanations, would recommend it. Okay, so this is your link. All right, so this is where you go to get your free downloads, and if you want to actually sign up. So it says www.securepdp, that stands for Property Development Program, securepdp.thinkific.com. Thinkific.com, that's the platform that it sits on. Okay, when you go to there, if you just want in the downloads, you go down to the content section, which is just a little scroll down. It's only one page, it's not loads of pages, just a landing page. You go down and there are various PDFs. You can click on the link, take that away with our compliments, and that's the things that we've spoken about there. So that's kind of it really, other than we're going to get into Q&A time now. I'm going to keep the link on there at the top. Obviously you've got contact details for myself and Arsh there as well, but that, I guess, I'm a little bit over, apologies, 20 minutes, shocking actually, but hopefully that's been of use to you. Arsh, back to you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for that, David. Lots of people have come in and said, yeah, great talk, really enjoying it. Viren says that you really want to get involved. Viren, okay, so you've got the link on screen there. Go to securepdp.thinkific.com. Okay, So he said that he's going to join first thing in the morning. Okay, some people sound very helpful. So Vera's come up, and there's a couple of people that have come across with some charities, said Tadworth Children's Charity. I'm all up for getting involved with children's charities, as David, both them and I have both got kids. So yeah, that's definitely something that we'll look at. Okay, so quick, I'm going through. If you've got a question on anything that David's gone through this evening, now's your time to put it in the question box, and we'll go through it in great detail. Okay, so one of the questions that are coming through the presentation is a basement classified as a relevant story, David?
No, it isn't. It's ground up. So if you've got a detached building that's got a basement and 2 stories, unfortunately, that wouldn't apply under these PED changes.
Okay, fine. So, and also, is this UK wide? Is Wales included?
Very good question. No, it is not. It is England only. The PD changes do not, interestingly, apply to Wales, as I understand it, and they certainly don't apply to Scotland. Different legislation.
Okay, brilliant. We'll get some really positive stuff here, David. So Charmaine says, refreshing delivery, no hard sell, and a realistic price. Thank you. Thank you, Charmaine. Hopefully you're finding it of interest, and more importantly, it'd be great to have you on board. Okay, so Syed has come in and says, in a mixed use, can you convert all the commercial to resi? Or does there still have to be an element of commercial there?
It depends on its form of commercial. So if it was an office, for example, then in theory you can convert it all. If it is on a high street, there's an element that's probably still going to need to be some form of commercial use. But what you can do, there is no sort of, if you like, kind of minimum size for shops, so you could shorten the frontage, and as long as you can get light to it, you could use the back part of the ground floor for some form of residential. Interestingly, with that, commercial property has the sort of rateable value, the value of each bit of it kind of decreases to an extent, the further you go in and up. So if you can find the right tenant who wants the front bit of the shop, you can still get the same rent potentially, but actually give them a smaller space because they don't need some of the other space, and you could convert that into residential. So it's a interesting and clever strategy once you fully understand it.
Okay, brilliant. So quite a few questions come in. Right, Fabrizio sounds like he's an overseas investor. Hi, Fabrizio. Do you think an overseas investor can go through these kind of projects as well, or do you have to kind of be on the ground?
Well, interestingly, one of the things I'd love to see from the property can be quite a lonely business, right? So having the community that hopefully we're going to sort of create from this, one of the things I want to do is and Arsh has done it with his community in the past, is sort of create a little bit of a map, so where people are. It's really about complementary skills. The short answer to the question is you can absolutely do this abroad, but you need to have an element of trusted advisors in some way, shape, or form, on the ground. I mean, let me give you this. So Simon, right? I know he doesn't live abroad, but he lives in Nottingham. Well, the guy that I mentioned earlier, we had a conversation, I can't remember, Thursday maybe, and he's come across a site that is about, I don't know, 40 miles from me, and it's a great site. And I'll go and meet the guy for coffee. I don't mind, because we're probably, if that does progress, we'd probably go and end up, doing that together. So as long as you've got people that are in a certain area, and I know Arsh does this in his group a lot. I'm sort of part of that WhatsApp group, and I see people, could someone look at a property for me in wherever it might be. The key with property development is the end values. Okay, that's where it all starts. Obviously demand and end values. So there is a limit. If you're in kind of lower value areas, doesn't matter where you live, it's going to be difficult to make ground up property development work. You probably do want a slightly different strategy, or you need to find your area somewhere else. But yeah, no reason at all why you couldn't do this remotely. Most of the initial stuff is desktop. I will not go out to a site until I've done my absolute thorough research, but I will always go out to a site because it could be smaller than the desktop stuff says, or interestingly, could be a lot bigger as well. So yeah, or all sorts of other things that you need to check. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. That you can absolutely do this remotely if you build a team around you, for sure.
Do you mind if I just add something there, David? And I'm probably just going to throw a bit of a caveat in there, is that never discount any site. And I say this with all property, look to monetize every lead. And that's something that I specialize in. So I'm part of the WhatsApp group. I'm part of seeing what you get up to. So because I'm in this with David. So if you see a site and you think, well, the numbers don't stack up. Now, the one thing that I say in property is don't get emotional and don't get emotionally attached to the site. Just because it may not work for you because it doesn't fit your parameters doesn't mean that it may not work for someone else. Now, if the figures are far too tight, then naturally, then perhaps, but it's always worth having that conversation first, because as David says, I've got a platform that we dispose of sites pretty much on a daily, weekly basis. So again, we're giving you that, not only we're giving you the education, but we're potentially giving you that exit strategy if you're not looking to build it out yourself as well. So we've got a hungry database of buyers that will actually buy, providing that the figures are right. And it, if you're over, let's just say that Fabrizio is based over abroad or in a different country, and he can't build that site out in Grimsby, for example. I know lots of people that will build in Grimsby and are based in the UK. And if the figures work for the people in Grimsby, but not for Fabrizio, why don't you make some money off that site? So never discount anything, if I'm honest, guys. We've had some further questions. So Rory on Mara. So David, I think you know Rory. Rory's quite experienced.
I do know Rory. Hey, Rory. Yep.
You guys signed up, guys. Great value, great content. Thank you very much. So we get lots of people that saying that they're looking to sign up. So okay, so David, just sorry, quick question today. He goes, I went to the website, but the free items are not available. So can you just clarify where the free docs are?
Yep. So you go down, basically go to that link and just scroll down the page, and there'll be effectively a content section, and or like a sort of a banner, and there are various click-on links that you should be able to click on. If you've had any problem getting that, you've got my details there. If for whatever reason it's not working, just drop me an email and I can send them to you. But it should be working. I checked it just before we came on.
Okay, fine. So lots of questions. We're going to get through these. Okay, so Tom's just come on. Thanks for the talk. Really helpful for someone very new to development. Possibly a stupid question. Tom, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Do you have a standard contingency percentage that you reflect in your appraisals, or will this differ from for each project?
Very good question. In the simple appraisal tool that you've got there as one of the sort of free downloads, that is automated at 10%. Now, it will change dependent on the individual site. So for example, if it has planning and all the conditions have been cleared, then I would normally drop that down, because I understand the site and I understand the risks and so on and so forth. But contingency should always be assumed that you're going to spend it. It's nice if you save it, but a lot of the times contingency is actually to kind of add value. You might go, you know what, it's the right thing to do X, Y, and Z because we're halfway through, but it will, it's just the right thing to do, or something comes up that you didn't plan for. But yeah, typically I'd put somewhere between 8 and 10% in there as a starting point.
Okay, great, brilliant. So let's just quickly. Helen says, great to hear you guys. So Helen Firth, part of the EPC. Great to hear you guys. Brilliant as always. So it would be good to. What would be a good strategy for a betting shop as lots are for sale? That's interesting. So because I was actually out for dinner last night with one of the UK's largest betting, or shall we call them gambling companies, and they say that betting is at a all-time high. So it's interesting that betting shops are for sale.
Yeah, I'm just checking, just looking through. I've got a feeling that betting shops come under sui generis, I think. I mean, I'm not a planning expert. I'm not qualified in planning, although I've done quite a few of them. But if you drop details, I would just confirm that because I've kind of got a crappy black and white copy and I can't read it. It's too small. But I've got a feeling betting shops come under sui generis.
Okay.
So yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind just probably giving David a quick call on that, is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Just if you drop me an email on that email just tomorrow, I'll double check and come back to you. That's fine.
Brilliant. So a few of you. So Rory's just said all the downloads work fine. So yeah, just scroll to the bottom and everything's there. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Rory. Alistair says, if the dwelling is in a conservation area, would you still be able to build upwards? And that's come from Susan. Sorry.
No.
Okay. So the caveats are conservation and listed. Is that correct? As it would have previously been with PD rights.
Yes, effectively. There are a few more. So we've got, I'm just going to read them here. Bear with me. So none of the rights apply in conservation areas, national parks, and the Norfolk Broads, area of outstanding natural beauty or sites of special scientific interest. And I didn't get into it because of time, but you've got to provide adequate natural light, and you obviously can't have issues like overlooking privacy and loss of light of neighbours and those kind of things. So it's still a planning process. And interestingly, just on this, on some people, well, not some people, some elements of permitted development, if you get to the end of the 56-day period where you've applied for it, if the local authority have not responded, you get consent because they haven't done their job. Now, some of these do not give you that right. Okay, so they have the right to come back and extend, ask further questions and so forth. So, I want to be clear. This isn't, you can go out tomorrow and just, start building a second story. There is an element, but the if you like, the precedent of being able to consider this as a right is there. Just another interesting thing on planning, there is no such thing as planning precedent. Okay, it doesn't exist. So just because next door has done something doesn't mean you can. Obviously it kind of helps, but it doesn't give you a right to do it because someone else has done it. Each case is individual, and we don't fully understand how this will play out until we start to get a few approvals coming through and maybe some challenges and so forth. But the if you like, the essence of it and the spirit of it is what I wanted to get across, in that it's just a different way of thinking, and it's a refreshing way of thinking. But you've also got to understand this is central government. Local government, it just kind of thinks differently, and they don't really want this, I would imagine, and they're certainly going to not be welcoming it. So you're still going to have a few battles along the way, but that's why understanding the process, involving the right specialist support team and so forth is key. But the essence and the spirit of it is a hugely positive move, in my opinion.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm just going through. We've got okay, so questions coming in about greenbelt as well. So Richard Elliott has asked, can you build above a new dwelling? Can you build above a new dwelling above in greenbelt and then combine dwellings? So I suppose what he's trying to ask is that, can we get around greenbelt by building above and then turn it into brownfield?
I would suspect not. One of the things that is in one of the PDFs, but I didn't talk about, is that under this new white paper, effectively all local authorities are going to, how land is classed, if you like, is going to completely change into one of three categories. So you're going to have, I can't remember the exact terms without referring to it, but effectively you're going to have areas where growth area where they encourage development, and then you're going to have one that's protected, so effectively almost potentially an extension of greenbelt in some cases. But greenbelt's tricky because you're getting into trying to create well, certainly the angle of sustainable development is obviously massive in those areas, and is maybe a little bit more subjective than some of the more kind of brownfield stuff. As I said, I could certainly point you in the right direction of people that will be able to answer that question on a specific property. I do not consider myself a planning expert by any. There are far clever, cleverer, more intelligent people than I on that particular area, and I will always still use planning people. I think the only key message I'd give there is you don't assume they cares the wrong word. I need to be careful. Don't assume that they will deliver this in the same way. You've still got to manage people, even if they're the expert, whether that be the architect or the planner or whatever. It's your project. You need to own that. You need to facilitate the outcome that you want. So finding good partners of that nature is key.
Okay, brilliant. So a couple of questions. Right. So if you have an empty shop for more than 6 months, can you convert it to residential? Can you convert it to a residential flat without a planning permission or consent under the new legislation?
Short answer on that is I don't know. There
Okay.
is the ability to turn shops. So Arsh, you might know better than me.
Yeah. So the shop is under a block of flats now around Lamry. I kind of know Lamry. So just so that you know, it'll all be dependent on the location. So if the location is in a high street location, the local authority may see you as taking away part of retail, and it may not be within in keeping. So that this is why a lot of cases are individual. So if you're looking to change the appearance of the location, then potentially not. Again, it will need something that may need to be looked at. If other places have done it, and I appreciate what David said, that other places have done it and it's now started to become part of the trend, we can't guarantee that it will 100% be granted. However, you may have a strong case for it to be granted. So there's lots of people coming in. I have a detached 6-bedroom HMO. What can be done to this under the new PD rights? That's a great question. The reason being because lots of people may be thinking, hang on, okay, I've got a 6-bed HMO over 2 floors. Can I now add a 3rd floor? So David, do you mind answering that?
My understanding is it doesn't apply to HMOs because that is not a mixed use building. Now, if you have a mixed use that has some form of retail, commercial on the ground floor, and you have some form of HMO style use on the upper floors, you may be able to do something, but my understanding is that those extra units would need to be individual dwellings. So, for example, you couldn't create all of a sudden, a 6-bed HMO that sits above a cafe into a 12-bed HMO, but you potentially could add 2 extra flats. What you can't do with this is the old sort of sidestep of create a massive flat and then later turn it into a 6-bed HMO. They've got wind of that, so you can't do that. This is about we're short of 300,000 homes every year, and the planning system doesn't help us. This is quite a clever way to try and help that solution, and also potentially free up stuff because you can create your own home to be bigger. Hopefully that sort of allows other people to get the property that you were going for previously. You don't necessarily have to move. It invigorate the sort of the refurb market and that sort of stuff as well. So there's a number of reasons doing it, but it's not. You can't take a 6-bed HMO and make it into a 12. Okay,
brilliant. So there's lots and lots of questions coming through. I'm just not so sure. So one question. I'll answer this. Is the high street dead? Well, if you have a look at what's happened in COVID, if you have a look at what's happening in retail, most retailers gone online. So I know lots of individual retailers who had shops on the high street prior to COVID. Their shops were shut, so they did have to convert to online, and their online now is actually taking more business than what their shop did previously. So in essence, you look at what's happened to retail over the last 10 years. The small pockets of retail parks have overtaken the high street. So where you get like little retail parks where you've got your Boots, your TK Maxx, your B&M wholesale, whatever it may be. Not to individualize, but it's not dead, would I say. It is definitely evolving, and you know, it's going more towards a retail park as opposed to high street, in my honest opinion. Okay, I'm just quickly going through the questions. And is there any class to add value, add stories on top of a house built in the 1890s?
So that again, sorry.
Is that how can we find the house that was built to satisfy the 1948 rule? Okay, so dear Edge, that's quite an individual question, quite a personalised question. May I ask that you just probably touch or send David a quick email on that? He may be able to have a look at that. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to answer it in the allocated timescale. One of the questions that someone has come through is, how do you assess build costs in order to calculate the end value profit? And I think that's quite an important question, because one of the questions about one of the importance about development is understanding the build cost element.
Yes, sorry, apologies. Can you say that for me again?
How do we find, so the question is, I've actually lost the question. How do we assess the build costs?
Okay, right. Okay, yeah, good question. Right. So, it's a big issue for lots of people, and it's covered in significant detail in the program. Effectively, the real simple way of doing this, and this is a sort of the back of the fag packet, and then I'll give you the various options that you can use. There are online estimation tools. There are things like SPONS, which is my or the guide that I would use as a sort of, it's a massive, great, thick red book that's got all your individual pricing. Obviously, you can use an independent QS and so on and so forth. In terms of the initial appraisal tool that's on there, I use an assumed cost per square meter of around about £1,400 per square meter, and that then calculates a basic build cost. And even if it's then remotely within the criteria at the bottom of being a deal, then obviously you fine tune that up or down. Clearly, if you're building in Belgravia versus no offense, Arsh, Wolverhampton, it's going to be a different price point that you're and kind of standard of build. So it is specific to the project, whether the project has if you're building so many more stories, then you're going to obviously need lifts, and there might be external works and so on and so forth. But we get into all of that detail in the program, and I give you a number of cost of works examples of all sorts of different kinds of buildings. But initially, you're looking at a square foot rate, and then as the project progresses, you're looking at what we call elemental rates. Okay, and then you're moving into effectively a bill of quantities. So you move from, for example, elemental rates is, what's it going to cost to build the substructure, then the superstructure, and so on and so forth. And then as it progresses, you get into the detail of, how many sheets of plasterboard and so on and so forth. And there's a whole process for that. And we kind of explain how that works, so that so you understand it, and also you're not going to get ripped off by contractors. Now, Arsh talked there just a little bit about say, for example, Grimsby. One of the things you have to understand is that you can do development anywhere to an extent, but how many layers you have on the project will depend on whether it's viable or not. So generally, we will use a main contractor to build out. Now, they've got a profit as well. But if you've got a scheme that, say, 3 or 4 houses, and it's I don't know, Lincoln or somewhere like that, right? Then you could still sell that scheme, but you'd probably be selling it to a local builder stroke developer, because as a developer, you've got a margin that you need to protect, and you've got to then also build in the margin for the main contractor. If you're one and the same, you can take a more pragmatic view of that. Interestingly, Mark Homer, who I'm sure most of you will know from Progressive, is doing a huge project at the moment. He has created his own building company. He's not bringing in a main contractor to do that. And one of the reasons I would suspect is because that protects his margin. If he's got to give a huge amount of profit to the main contractor, that squeezes his developer's profit. And all of these elements, the various stages of all the parts that go towards the end values, how you cost it, how much profit you need, what happens if costs go up or down, etc., is all part of that process that you have to understand. And again, that's what we cover in the program.
Okay, so we've got, let's have a quick look. So sorry, Maurice just asked, is it £1,400 per square metre or per square foot? Just to clarify.
Per metre.
Okay, brilliant.
I'm going to show, it'll be really geeky now, but 10.764, I think, is converting feet into meters and vice versa. So you just divide it or multiply it by that, depending on what you were doing.
Okay,
So
is that to build? Is that for all developments, or is that specific flats or house, or is it residential or commercial or?
Okay, so that would be residential if you were doing, and this is where you just. I mean, I understand the reason for the question, but you got to be careful here. It is not, it is one of those things that there is no straight answer to. But if you want me to be as sort of generic as I possibly can be, I would work on the assumption of somewhere between 140, 145 a square foot, or 1400, 1450 a square meter for a traditional kind of house build. If it was an office to resi conversion, I'd probably be down about 100 to 110. And if it was a high-rise block of flats, I'd be up at probably 180, 185 per square meter. And obviously, if it's a high-end house, then it might be 2,000.
Sorry, David, I'm assuming this is all in the documents that are provided anyway.
Correct.
Okay, so let's get moving on. So let's have a quick look. I think we've answered a large majority of the questions, because a lot of the questions are kind of repetitive. Let's have a quick look. Okay, is this all excluding VAT for costs for the builder margins?
Excluding VAT, did he say?
Yes, correct. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, if you're building new homes, there isn't VAT, so there's a way that you would do it in order to make sure that you're not paying VAT on that.
Okay, so D1 high street building to be converted into flat under PD. Is it mixed use A3, or does it still stay as D1?
D1 is things like dental surgeries and that sort of stuff, isn't it? So if I would need to go back to the other slide, bear with me 1 second. I normally feed my cat about 7, right? This thing's wandering around going nuts because he hasn't been fed. So D1 effectively, yes, moves into E. So if it was previously D1, you've got a lot of option there to change it into, a lot of different things. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Okay, brilliant. So I suppose what we should do now, David, I'm just conscious of time. We've kind of slightly run over. Okay. One of the questions that have come in, well, this is the final question, by the way, guys. So Simon has asked, how do I validate or check what planning permission has been granted when property is advertised for sale as having PP? This is quite a straightforward one, but not many people will know it, David. So do you want to just clarify that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd go on the local planning portal. All planning information is public. So you just go onto the planning portal, search the address, or if, obviously more information if you've got it, and it will basically bring up the status of it, and also all of the drawings and all the supporting information. So if it ain't on there, then absolutely you should be asking the question and interrogating it further. And you're absolutely right. Don't assume. People lie, unfortunately. There's different types of planning as well. And again, we go into all of that in, outline planning is not the same as full planning, and so on and so forth. So, be really clear what type of planning it is. But in theory, all of that is on the local planning portal.
Okay, brilliant. That kind of brings us to a close, David. Hopefully that's kind of answered all the questions. So if there are any further questions, please feel free to get in contact with both myself and David. As we've clearly said, we've opened the platform. We've run it to a beta testing group, which is part of my mentorship group. They've come along. We wanted to make sure that the product was correct. We wanted to make sure that the product was very detailed, and it is by and large the most detailed property development program out there. It's not a membership or anything like that. It is literally a one-off cost, and you get access to all the documents and all the videos that David has suggested in the webinar. Hopefully you've enjoyed the webinar. Hopefully you've enjoyed the Q&A session, as well as everything else that we've been through. If you've got some further questions, please feel free to reach out to both David and myself, and we'll answer as many as we can. And then let's go from there. Let's just have a quick look. Everyone's saying fantastic webinar, brilliant. Okay, so glad that you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to working with you. David, is there any final thoughts that you want to mention before you go?
No, just, yeah, obviously appreciate people's time. I genuinely hope it's been of use. Whether you just sort of decide to kind of come and learn a bit more, or whether you're off and running. I wish all of you the best of luck, love to work with some of you and get more deals done. So please and listen, there might be some questions that you maybe want to ask individually or whatever. You've got Arsh's details there, you've got mine. Don't sort of hesitate to reach out. Also one other thing quickly on there, if you're not sure about the content, one of the other PDF links on the page there is the entire syllabus. Okay, so there's nothing hidden. It's not that you turn up and then, well, what's this course all about, right? It's all there. It's all full disclosure. So if you're unsure, have a look at that. But yeah, the next fortnightly call that we have actually is this Wednesday. So for those of you that join, then you're absolutely welcome to join that session. Once people join, assuming they've got the right email and stuff, then I will ping out communication in the next kind of day or so. Give me 48 hours, because this is the first one we've done on this sort of scale. But yeah, would love to to get to know you guys and work with you.
Fantastic. Okay, so lots of questions. There's still lots of questions coming in. There is a recording of this webinar, and we will distribute it over the next week. So guys, on that note, I wish you all the very best. Hope you have a great productive week ahead. As always, it'd be great to work with you along with David and I, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. David, thank you very much for coming online. Thanks for being a great host and answering loads of great questions. And let's see where this goes from here, and we'll speak to you all very soon. Take care. Good night. God bless.
Yeah, good night.